Welcome to Open Minds. This is a show where we just discuss issues in a spirit of openness. And in the studio we have from the Open Minds group, Mark and Ed, welcome, and to Kathy, who's our visitor for today, our guest, our special guest for today. We're talking in this episode about truth, lying and deception, if we ever get there. And so Pontius Pilate, you all know who Pontius Pilate was, and how could you forget him? His last words to Jesus was a question, and that question was, what is truth? And Jesus was silent in his response. He didn't come back at him. So, you know, what is truth? What do you think? What do we think truth is today in the light of that?
I think there are different types of truth. There's a truth that's what my truth might be different to your truth or your truth, but then there are factual truths in terms of mathematics and logic.
What makes them factual truths then?
Quite often not perception. We could all
quantify it, and everybody can agree on it.
Witness an accident or an incident, and each of us would have a different take on it as to what happened. So one could say, well, you said this, and he's saying something totally different, but it's because of the perspectives, and the vantage points
that you might find in common is that there was an accident, or an incident of some sort. Where we agree might be that it's our perception of its causes, what happened during it, may be slightly different because of our different prejudices, our different background, our different position at the time.
Yeah.
So to me, truth might be something which is verifiable, if you like, if you can believe what verifiable is, but verifiable by more than one individual. So where people agree with circumstances, that starts to become or make up the elements of truth. A fact can be a fact to me, but not to other people. But truth is where more than one, I think, where more than one person agrees.
That's how the police kind of assess a case. That's how they build a case, by getting agreement on
seeing what the common bits of evidence are, where people agree, and that starts to become truth for that particular case.
But what happens if, like, a group of people all agree to tell a lie? So they're all in agreement, but they have agreed to tell a lie. So you can't really say just because there are a lot of people saying the same thing that they're all telling the truth. Because you're always basically saying it depends on the numbers as to whether or not they are speaking the truth, or what they are saying is a truth.
Well, that's a good point. I don't know the answer to that. I think maybe that's why Jesus said nothing.
I mean, coming back to the difference between truth and facts, and we're talking about relativity here, aren't we? We're talking about the fluidity of truth and factual information. But 1 + 1 = 2, doesn't it? And there's no other way you can calculate that equation.
That's what I
differently.
meant by a factual truth.
So that is a hard, what you would call a hard fact. And so it is true, isn't it? It's always true. The answer to that question is always true.
I'm glad we haven't got a mathematician in the room, because
they
would probably tell you wrong.
They would oppose that,
and they give you a load of stuff about why that's not always true. But I think it's always true.
So we agreed that there are some things that are always true.
I think we can agree that it's true that the sun rises every morning.
From a perspective of the planet.
Yes, okay, yeah. From our perspective on the planet, the sun rises every morning.
But somebody who's blind doesn't witness that. So in their world, the sun doesn't rise because it's always, say, darkness. So,
and others might say it only rises
but
because
what I'm saying is that
it does.
The truth depends on where you're witnessing it from, and how you're witnessing reality will depend on what is true to you.
So
truth is shifting, isn't it?
This is postmodern theory, isn't it? So we bring our own perspective to truth, don't we? We determine our own truth in that sense, because
our belief system and which has come from our experiences and our knowledge, those contribute to what is the truth to us, don't they? where we come from.
So the truth.
If we go back to the accident, then say the accident involved a motorcyclist, and my truth was that I'd had bad experiences with gangs of motorcyclists in my youth, then my version of that truth might be that he was speeding or she was speeding, when in fact that might not be the case. So is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
My version of the truth might be different.
Our own prejudices contribute to our version of truth.
But you
of
could
facts.
also believe, you could actually believe that he was speeding, or you could actually think, deliberately say, I'm going to say that he was speeding because I don't like motorcyclists.
So I could twist the truth to
So
my
you
own
could actually be
purposes,
deliberately twisting the truth, so you actually are telling a lie. Whereas, let's say, for argument's sake, you're frightened of bikes, so you perceive them to be going faster than they really are.
Yes.
So that is still, I suppose one could argue, still
my
true.
truth.
Exactly.
It's my truth, yes.
But it's coloured by your fear of
and
motorcyclists.
my experience, my
yeah.
prejudice.
That is possibly why Jesus remained silent, because,
It's rather a big subject.
Yeah, because truth is constantly shifting.
And I think Jesus probably knew that Pontius Pilate was being a little bit malicious, trying to cheat him into something, to
Like
trick
a
him.
trick question.
It's a trick question. And then because Jesus said nothing, Pontius Pilate knew he was tricking him. And the two of them, being bright individuals, just decided to let it go like that. That there is no real answer from one perspective or the other. They both know that truth is made up of many, many different views.
So is there a higher truth? Because successive civilizations and cultures have appealed to a higher truth.
Well, I don't think any of us are theologians here, are we? Or philosophers even. But we can all be amateur philosophers and theologians, if we may.
There would have been a truth at one time that the Earth was flat and that it was at the centre of the universe. I suppose years later, that truth became a falsehood, a lie. So people later on, their truth was something totally different than the people, generations before them.
But can we appeal to a higher truth?
Well, that is a higher truth. Later on, when we have more knowledge about a situation or about reality, that is a higher truth. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's an ultimate truth. An ultimate truth, I would imagine, there is nothing above it. Whereas a higher truth, I think, possibly, years later or with more knowledge, there can be a truth above that.
So if someone came along and did some quantum stuff on us and they were able to demonstrate scientifically that the Earth is actually just a hologram and it isn't round or solid, which was the move from being flat to being round and solid, is that then another truth?
Well, it's a higher truth, isn't it?
It's a higher truth or a later truth. And then would that be the end? How would you know? You never know when you've actually come to the final truth. When we die?
But is there an ultimate truth, do we think?
Well, that's what I mean. When we die, will we discover an ultimate truth? I don't have a clue.
How do you know when you've arrived at an ultimate truth? Like I say, going back to the flat Earth, or the Earth being the centre of the universe or centre of the solar system, that may have been at that time the ultimate truth because it appeared so. But years later, they didn't ever think that the Earth would actually be found out to be round. So when will you ever reach an ultimate truth and know that there is nothing else to be added to that?
Okay.
Personally, I think that ultimate truth is, at the end of the day, what we think it is at the time. And it will change, but it's still at that moment the ultimate truth.
Was it Jesus who said, believe and it will be? So is the truth what you actually believe it to be?
Okay, let me just ask this as a kind of, this isn't a trick question.
So we don't need to stay silent.
You don't need to stay silent, but what I'd like to know is, when was the last time you told a lie?
This morning.
And why?
I was at Iceland, I was at the till, and she said, do you have a bonus card? And I said no, because it was quicker and easier than saying, yes, but it's at home and I keep forgetting to bring it, and can I have a receipt and I'll do this, that and the other. and it was just for sheer convenience.
So it's like what we call a lie of convenience. We could
Yes,
call
a
that.
lie of
I
convenience.
don't know if that
yes.
is actually a
I did
phrase.
exactly the same thing in Holland and Barrett. He asked me had I got a loyalty card, and I do, but every time I go looking for it in my wallet, I can never find it. Then they want to know your phone number. So I just said no, because I wanted to get out the shop.
Get out the shop,
So that
yeah.
was the last lie you told.
That was the last lie. It was about 2 hours before I came here.
Right, so two kind of retail lies.
Retail
today.
liars, yeah.
Yeah,
just
yeah.
Serial liars.
Yeah.
And I
You are
just,
one for the
I
puns,
wonder
eh?
if I just should move a little bit further away. I mean, I could be mischievous and simply say I lie about everything, and everything I say is a lie, and then you'd all be in a paradox situation with
Yes.
that, unfortunately. So I won't do that, because that's really mischievous, isn't it? But I think my answer to that would be, I probably don't know the last time I lied. I know that I will have done, but I may do it so frequently. In terms of the level of lie may be very, very tiny. It may be a slight bending of the truth. It might be part of the truth, not the whole truth. But for me, I mean, I can't remember when the last time I did that was. But for me, lying is only useful if it protects people. Now, that may start at protecting me, but you want to debate that. But if it doesn't do harm, then I think it's okay. And that would be me. I can't remember the last time I did any lie that did harm to any living being.
Well, we're coming to the end of part one now of our discussion on truth, lying and deception. We'll see you after the break, and we're going to come back and talk about when we were little kids and stealing and so on. See you after the break. Well, welcome back to the second part of Open Minds. We're talking about truth, lying and deception. When we were little kids, we all did things that we knew, but did we know that they were wrong?
So I think I mean, when my children were little, and I'm sure I did this myself, there would be a case of, no, I didn't eat all the chocolate. I didn't have any chocolate at all, and I'm smothered in it. And so it's very obvious that the deed has been done. It's obvious that the child knows they shouldn't have done it because they're denying it. But it's like a barefaced lie, and with all the evidence suggesting the opposite. So we do.
So we
learn
learn to lie from quite an early age.
Yeah,
Do you
I
think?
We
so.
learn because we
Of
need
fear.
to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
Because if I say, yes, I ate all those biscuits or all that chocolate, if I'm going to get told off or smacked or whatever it is, the next time round, you know, when you get asked, did you do this? You're going to say, no, and it wasn't me, it was somebody else.
So it's a kind of, we're talking about self-protection.
Yeah.
really.
Yeah, I think that most.
I think if
that's
there was no
right.
consequences
It is- I
to
think-
eating the biscuits, then you would say next time, oh yeah, I ate those biscuits as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it
I'm pretty
wasn't me.
sure that lying is a learned behaviour, because I have the similar experiences. You know, the first time you're asked as a child, and the first time you ask your child, if it's that way around, did they do something that they don't know is a good or bad thing? They just know that mum's asking me or dad's asking me a question. I'll say, I think it's a natural thing to say what happened. But then if they find out that, right, you're in for it, the next time they might decide to bend the truth a bit.
Do we allow children to be honest? Do we allow our children
Yeah.
to be honest? If there's a price
Yeah.
to be paid for being honest, then of course the alternative is to lie.
And
But
does
do-
lying then become a natural reaction to a fearful
It
situation?
becomes a learned behaviour. I
But
think we then
do we need to
carry
lie
that
to
forward.
make our way in the world? And do we learn this from an early age?
Well, I think what would happen if we told the truth all the time? Say the wife said, oh, "Does my bum look big in this?"
He said,
Huge.
absolutely. Yeah.
What's the consequence of that?
And if
just
the
on a
wife was all right
small
with being
scale.
told the truth, if she then turned around and said, oh, right, I'll go and wear something else,
Yeah.
that's fine. But if she then turned around to the husband and gave him an earful,
Yeah.
next time she asked him, does my bum look big in this, he's going to say, no, love, it looks
Well, of course, there's
perfect.
that movie called The Invention of Lying,
Oh, absolutely,
which
yes,
is all
that's very
about that
good.
sort of subject, isn't it? You know, where people are telling the truth, and it really makes you cringe,
But
doesn't
actually,
it?
when your wife or your partner asks you that question, actually they don't want the truth, do they?
No.
They actually want a lie. Would you? Yeah, they're asking you to tell them a lie.
No. They would.
I-
If you
I
said
think-
that to them, do you want the truth? They'll say, absolutely.
Yes,
Tell me the truth.
I think
But they don't want
think
it.
they want the truth, but the reality, they're lying to themselves then.
Yeah.
And I think we lie to ourselves an awful lot.
We don't want to get into this, does your wife want the truth or the lie? Because we could be here for 2 days.
Or husband, we say.
Yes, yes.
Or partner
Husband,
of
yeah.
any
I
description.
mean, we all see many husbands doing that. Does my bum look big enough?
No, but they might say, oh, can you see him,
Yeah. Do we need
whatever,
to-
yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay, we talk about that expression, telling white lies. What exactly is a white lie? I'm not sure I've ever known really. It's because
Yeah, like
it's
a
not a
white
black
witch.
lie, is it? So a black lie is a bad lie, and a white lie is somehow a good lie or a lie for good
usually
purposes.
insignificant. It's small. It doesn't matter.
It's to protect somebody from feeling hurt in a situation where it doesn't really matter. For instance, being asked, are you available to come to such and such a do tomorrow night? You really don't want to be there because you don't like so-and-so who's going to be there, but it's rude to say so, and it might upset somebody. So I can't make it, I'm busy, I'm sorry, is going to be a bit nicer, a bit more
Or it could be
polite.
partly true and partly false, couldn't it?
Well,
That
let's
kind
give
of
an
response.
example of an paramedic who turns up at a serious accident, and they're dealing with one victim of the accident who really is very, very dangerously about to die, and they know that their vitals are going, and they ask them, "Am I okay?" And the ambulance man says, "You're fine. You're going to be fine. You're going to be fine," and they know that they're not going to be fine. Or let's say they know that the chances are pretty slim, and by saying you're going to be fine, it might even create a miracle in the individual. That's a lie. It's an absolute lie. But is that good or bad? Is it a white lie, as you called it? I think that's a deception which is intended for a very specific time in a very specific case for a very specific individual. No one else, just you and the person.
And for good purposes.
For a good
But
purpose.
there was a time, historically in medicine, when people would withhold the truth of a certain diagnosis from, from a patient. And now people are saying, well, no, these people have the right to know that they've got cancer, and they have the right to know how long they've got, and withholding that information is wrong. And yet there was a time when we would, because we thought it was better for them. So again,
So we're making judgments along the way as to what we think is better for that person to hear, rather than respecting their ability to hear the truth.
Well, there could be people who, if they don't know that they're dying of what is normally a terminal illness, if they don't know that, they may just terminally die. But if they know, some people may have the will to do something about it in themselves.
What about somebody who, has 6 months to live? They may want to do certain, if they knew they only had 6 months to live,
I've got a
they may
bucket
want to
list,
do
I'm gonna
certain
do that.
things. They may want to, prepare their affairs, their funeral and everything. But if somebody's told them, no, you're fine, you've got years to live, and then they die in 6 months' time, without writing a will or whatever, then really have we done that person a service?
And
by lying
each
to
case has to be judged on its own merit, I think. I think the individuals who are confronting someone like that, who has a truth to be told to them or not, has to judge whether it's in their best interest to do so. And I'm glad I'm not in a position of that responsibility, and that other people have
But
to
again, I
do
think
that.
we're moving away from that.
We
I
are,
think the whole idea of saying, well, we can assess whether or not this person is able to take the truth or not. That's not our. That again isn't our.
Well,
isn't
we
our
sometimes
shop,
say,
really.
don't we? Again, this is a common expression. The truth hurts. Sometimes the truth actually does hurt, doesn't it? And can affect people permanently. Maybe they're not the terminal illness examples, maybe not the best example. But if we sometimes to tell people, the truth, the hard truth is too much for them to bear, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it can be very hard to do. I think it takes a brave person to tell even a very close friend a certain thing. I'm trying to think of a good example that's not as flippant as your breath smells, but even that, I can find that very difficult to tell my closest friend. Yeah, I'd be the person who'd be expected to say that.
I think what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, as the old expression is. And so if someone can take what you're going to say without actually dying as a consequence, they will be stronger ultimately for knowing that. You know, we've seen people, I'm sure we've all given people some truths which were not as sensitive as we hoped they would be, as we hoped we would be of that truth. And we've seen the reaction being very negative to hearing what we told them. But ultimately, they've learned something from that.
What about public lies, when people in authority, for example, don't tell us the truth or withhold the truth or tell a falsehood?
Talking about that tube murderer that's come out in the news recently. This was in the 70s and 80s, was it? Something like 18 murders. They realised pushing people onto the track. And they haven't actually verified this, but this guy's written a book saying that
He did it.
The person who did it was put away for another murder, and he confessed in prison to all these other murders. And there were two reasons apparently why we weren't told about this. One was to avoid panic, so this is to protect us in some way, and one was to cover the backs of Scotland Yard, who hadn't done enough or didn't have enough information to capture the man.
Or to stop copycat.
Yes.
So when there's a sort of shutdown in the news on where something's, maybe there's a riot in Warrington or somewhere, not to, disparage Warrington anyway. In Warrington, they may shut down the news coverage on that because they're worried it might spread to Wigan or to,
So we're talking really lies of omission as opposed to somebody actually saying
It didn't happen.
an actual lie. We're saying that people, the police or whoever, are choosing not to divulge a certain piece of information.
A cover. Well, so there's
So
a
it's a
cover up
deception rather than an outright
It's
lie.
not even a
isn't it?
deception. It's just not telling,
not telling the
a
truth.
particular story because you don't, like you've just said, you don't want copycat killers or panic. That is one of the.
It's the third bit of the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, because they're not telling the whole truth. It's true.
Yes.
It's it's
everything
nothing
about-
but the truth, but it's not the whole truth. It's not everything. And the leaving out that everything, I think, you could argue, is for a good reason.
So we're back to protecting people, aren't we, again?
Yeah. Even though protecting people, with hindsight, you may have thought it would have been better to have told the whole truth, because only with hindsight you would know if it did protect those people or it didn't. But if the intention was genuinely to protect people, then you could argue it's okay.
Okay, we're going to our commercial break again now, natural break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about self-deception, about deceiving ourselves. So join us after the break for Open Minds. Welcome back to Open Minds. We're talking about truth, lying and deception. What I want to talk about now in this part is about self-deception, about lying to ourselves, which I think we all do. And I want to ask the question, do you think it's a necessity that we lie to ourselves in order to, again, back to protection? It makes us feel better about ourselves in the sense that if we were fully truthful to ourselves, about ourselves, we wouldn't be able to cope with it. We'd become sad, depressed. What do you think about that? Is it a necessity?
I don't know, because sometimes I suppose it depends on your perception of yourself. Some people can't actually see the truth about themselves. Somebody who's suffering from
any truth at all.
Well, anorexia, for argument's sake. Some people will look in the mirror and they will constantly see themselves as being fat, and as a result of that, will starve themselves. So they can't see. They are deceiving themselves.
They're not lying to themselves.
I deal with women every day who have body dysmorphic or disorders and who will look in the mirror and see something that actually isn't true. And it's an absolute distortion of perception. But it's their truth, it's real to them.
Yeah.
It's not a Billy Liar sort of scenario. No. A Billy Liar scenario, a Walter Mitty thing, is where you are living a lie so much to actually build yourself up or some other motivation. That the truth, you create a truth. You tell yourself so many times that these lies that you start to believe it.
But it's that's a better world, isn't it? The Walter Mitty, you are more or you are better than you really are. Whereas with somebody, that's got body dysmorphia, they are always worse than they really are.
Yes.
They're fatter, they
Negative
are ugly,
self-talk.
and so therefore, they turn that in on themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what I'm talking about is when we deceive ourselves in a kind of a low level kind of way, where we say, I can't play football at all. I'm really bad at football. I'm too old to play football now. My son actually happens to be a good footballer, but when I was younger, I used to tell myself I wasn't that bad, when actually I was really awful. But I kind of needed to tell myself that in order to make myself not feel so bad about not being able to play. I mean, that kind of thing.
Sometimes you actually, tell yourself, I'm not that bad, and you believe that. It's only when someone else comes along that's really, really, really good that you actually realise that you're really, really rubbish. So in a certain kind of reality, you can be telling yourself something, and yes, you may be deceiving yourself, but if there's nothing to compare your ability to, then yes, you may be quite good.
I mean, I'll give you another personal example. Okay, when I was young, a little bit older, for a very, very brief window, I sang in a punk band. Right now, really, it was absolutely awful, and and I can't sing to this day, and but I kidded myself for a few months that we were going to be the next Sex Pistols, and that I was really good at this thing, and I wasn't, but it made me feel good about myself at a time when I probably had lower self-esteem. I mean,
I thought that being in a punk band, it was an advantage to sing really badly. But that's a difference.
Myth, actually. That's actually a lie. That's not true. And
That's a media lie.
yeah, it is.
It is.
Yeah, as I found out very quickly when nobody wanted to actually hire us to play.
Yeah, I think lying to yourself has many motives. There's no expression that says you can kid others, but you can't kid yourself.
Oh, I think you can kid yourself, though.
But there is a saying, nevertheless.
Oh, yes.
And the saying is based on, experiences of many people over many years, that you really can't kid yourself. But I think that what that says is, unless you have psychologically convinced yourself that the lie you're telling yourself is the truth, then you can't kid yourself. Ultimately, you cannot kid yourself. If I keep saying I'm a great singer and I'm really rubbish, then that's not going to help me. I know she won't thank me for this, but my daughter used to blag her way into rock bands. Now, is that wrong? She was kidding herself that she could sing or she could play, but they got her in, and she then got better as a consequence of that. So she blagged her way.
And now she's a professional.
And now she's a professional.
Yeah.
And so blagging your way is more a case of having the confidence to know that if you don't get in there, you don't have a chance to do something to improve to the point where you are good at what you're blagging.
But you're deceiving others when you're
deceiving
your way
others
in.
when you're doing that.
What we're trying to say is about deceiving yourself.
It is a kind. You can see why I would fall for that.
Yeah.
Kathy, what were you saying?
The sort of self-deception I've fallen foul of in the past, and I'm thankfully moving away from now, is as a self-employed person, when business has got bad in the past or become more difficult, I will kid myself that it's because of outside forces. It's not my fault. It's not because I'm not doing the right thing or I'm not putting enough effort in. And it's only when I've actually faced the truth for myself and taken responsibility for that and gone, actually, I could have done better there. I could have done this instead. I could have made a better decision, that business has started to improve again. And I think that in that case, lying to myself wasn't doing me any good at all.
There's also, in the same scenario, you could be telling yourself that the figures aren't that bad. And actually, they look quite good compared to where I was a year ago. And you start to kid yourself about some fundamental economics, which possibly gets you into a lot of trouble then, because you've persisted beyond the point where you could have fixed it or just got out. So kidding yourself that things are going okay, not because it's someone else's fault, but just you want it to be okay. So you tell yourself it is okay. And it can be quite destructive.
Yeah, Some people could call that positive thinking, though.
You
could actually say, well, don't dwell on the negative. just try and look at the positive side of things.
Well, how about if we took it between a man and a wife in a relationship that is really deteriorating, but you're kidding yourself because you're afraid of leaving the relationship and being alone. So you kid yourself that, oh, well, actually things are okay, I can carry on. But in fact, it would be healthier for
And
you
it is
to...
a bigger crisis, yeah.
Yeah. And,
So you
That's
get
kind
that,
of fear
that's
of
where
the
that
truth, isn't it?
back to expressions again, but that's where the expression, you know, they were living a lie.
yes.
You know, so this
yes,
married
exactly.
couple that were kidding themselves, they were literally living a lie. I mean, can we do that? Can we just live in a zone which is actually a zone of
can,
untruth
yeah,
in that
yeah.
sense? I think we probably can, can't we?
And I think people will live like that maybe for long, long periods, maybe right to death.
Probably more often than not where children are concerned, they will.
Yeah.
It's worth it to kid yourself and to make yourself believe that things are okay and that you can handle it just for the sake of the children.
Because it's
That's
in
that's
the
a
kid's
classic,
interest.
isn't it?
Well, there are some couples who, you know, say, well, there was a time when we were going through a really, really rough patch, but we stayed together, and now we've come through that.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? So they
Yeah.
haven't like kind of faced the truth and said, oh, you know, this isn't working. Let's separate.
Or this isn't. Maybe they faced the truth and said, "This isn't working. Let's
do
go to
something
relate,
about it,
or
yeah,
let's
yeah.
do
So
something
they
about
haven't
it."
been lying to themselves. Can I come to something else now? Some years ago, I was having some counselling, and it was over a work situation where I felt I'd been manipulated. And I asked my counsellor, Sarah, she was called, I said, Sarah, you know, have I been manipulated? And she said to me, she said, everyone is a manipulator, and everyone is manipulated.
Yeah.
What do you think of that? Do you think that's true? Or do we live in this kind of manipulative
Starts
universe?
as a child, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It starts as a child. I know that if I say this to mum, she's more compassionate and dad will let me have it. And she'll persuade dad that I should have this, and vice versa.
Well, that goes on in my home, I have to say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we know straight away from a very early age we're learning manipulation.
Yes.
Being manipulated, I think that's quite destructive. I think people, when they learn they're being manipulated,
When it's a
resent it.
conscious thing, you mean?
Yeah.
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 And to be manipulated, to find out that you've been manipulated, even if the person manipulating was doing so in good faith, I think it's very destructive.
I mean, what is manipulation? I mean, I could influence you to, you know, to change your career and become a successful something or other,
Yeah.
or am I manipulating you?
If I had hired you to coach me in some way or to mentor me in some way, then maybe that's positive manipulation.
But that's
But,
what I'm saying.
yeah.
What is kind of
It's the
manipulation?
whole world of sort of PR and marketing and the whole communications
Oh, and
world.
advertising
You know,
and
advertising, you know,
yeah.
commercial manipulation.
So moving on from the family situation
Yeah.
of manipulation, which is where I think we learn the power of manipulation from a very early age. Some people then go on to make it a business.
Yeah.
You could argue that the media does it, the government does it. We
Yeah.
can't necessarily say in every case for bad or for good, but they do it. And PR is about that. So being a good PR person is knowing how to influence people in the way you want them to view something,
Yes.
to
You
make
want
them
a
buy
You want
something.
a certain outcome
Yeah.
from that person,
Yeah.
as
Selling
opposed
is
to
full of
allowing
it.
them to choose an outcome, possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah, talk to a salesperson, and they will tell you that their goal is to make people believe something that they may not have fully believed before. It may not be for a bad purpose, but they're trying to change someone's perception of what it is they're selling, the product or the service that they're
say we're
selling.
selling deodorant, you wish people to believe that they smell.
No, that people smell, and that they're not going to be like that.
Or they don't
Right,
smell
okay.
nice, so they need to smell nicer.
Smell nicer.
Yeah.
Or people won't like you if you don't use this deodorant because you
Yes.
smell.
So
Or
is that-
better still,
Yeah.
people will like you if you use this.
Oh,
Is
the
that a
high
dece-
karate
Yeah.
adverts with the women
Absolutely,
coming. Yeah.
absolutely.
It
Is
will
that,
have that
is that a
result.
deceptive thing? Are we just, you know, what? Not we, but are they the big companies deceiving us
Well,
in
is
that
it true
sense?
or wrong? Is it true or false what they're saying? I mean, take the high karate thing. Is that a lie?
I can't
That it will
I
make
can't
you
remember.
attract lots of people?
I've never seen anybody do that in real life. So either
So
people aren't
it's-
wearing high karate or it doesn't work.
Okay. So does everyone who sees that believe that they're going to be doing karate with people?
I think
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It depends.
it's an
a lie
extreme
is
one, and
is
that's
that
fun,
the
isn't
person
it?
receiving
I think
it.
you're dating yourselves by talking
I
about
know,
high
yeah.
karate.
People won't
I
know.
haven't seen a high karate
clue what
advert.
they're
for-
talking about.
The links adverts where the women are going along
We're
and
going to cut now to our commercial break, and then I promise to our viewers viewers that when we come back, we're not going to be talking about high karate.
Oh.
We just carry on talking about manipulation for a while, I think. Okay, see you after the break.
Thanks.
Welcome back to Open Minds. For our final part, we're talking about truth, lying, deception, manipulation, and we were having a great conversation about manipulation before the break, and I want to pick up on that again. I once heard a definition of spiritual manipulation, of witchcraft actually, as spiritual manipulation, and by witchcraft I'm meaning kind of bad witchcraft. I know there's an argument around
To influence somebody to do something they wouldn't
to
normally
use spiritual power to deceive and exert power over other people. What do you think? What do we think about that? Do we think we can do that?
On a belief that spiritual power does exist and witches exist.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm interested more to say who's kind of come out with that kind of statement about witchcraft. Has that come from, say, the church?
It did come from a church person. Yeah. But
one could actually argue as well that even within, say, Christianity, that people are manipulated.
Yeah. Well, let's take it on a general. Let's think about the Moonies.
Yeah.
I watched a TED talk recently about somebody who'd recovered from the Moonies, and they were talking about how they'd been manipulated and deceived, and how they bought into this whole kind of belief. They were manipulated very quickly, actually, into brainwashed. I mean, you use that term, brainwashing.
Yeah. And you quite often call these religions cults, don't you? Where people are, like you say, brainwashed into thinking, certain things and certain ideals.
You change people's beliefs and values systems by techniques to brainwash, to psychologically change the perception of things.
But are they being presented another reality? Just a different reality?
I think they're being presented a reality that belongs to the people doing it to them.
Right.
If you're taking away their choice as well, if you're saying this is the only reality, if you're offering somebody this choice or this choice, that's okay, I suppose. But if you're only offering one choice, you're taking away their choice, and you're saying this is the only way, then I think that is manipulation.
But that happened in early Christianity as well. In fact, even today, people would go around the world and preach Christianity to the masses and persuade them that was the way to be.
The extreme, a lot of money can be made from it for personal gain. There have been lots of cases where there have been cults. I don't want to go too far back in time, like the high karate thing, but just take, for instance, these days, Scientology. I mean, there may be some Scientologists out there who will despise what I'm about to say, but from what I can see, that they do draw people in and they do manipulate their minds using psychological warfare, basically.
Techniques,
and they will take... that people have to pay large sums of money to go further and further within the system, to reach the dizzy heights of the Tom Cruises and those sorts of people. And this is based on something which, to me, just seems ridiculous. This Thetan, alien thing that came down and... it's just, to me, it's bizarre.
It's kind of unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah, beyond the pale.
So that's manipulation of people who are vulnerable to that kind of message. Is that right? So they would pick on people, only those people who were vulnerable, who showed a vulnerability.
But those same people could also be vulnerable to the Christian message,
of course,
or the
Whoever
Islamic
gets to them
message.
first, then.
Yeah, exactly.
Or to
quite often or not, there are people who are very susceptible to manipulation
and deception.
Deception.
For whatever reason.
Yeah.
Now,
I'm a very gullible person,
You are.
People, you can tell me black is white, and generally I'll believe you,
Right.
So I'm ripe for that sort of thing.
I'd like to know if you're ripe for this. Do you watch soap operas?
Not now, I used to, but not so much now.
I've heard it said that, I don't know if you noticed, I do watch soap operas.
Someone has to.
Someone has to. I watch soap operas. I watch a lot of television, but I've heard it said that the government use soap operas, to communicate certain messages they need to get out. So you'll note with soap operas that the issues of the day often come up
So there'll
in
be
the
a theme,
plots.
like somebody will say,
Yeah.
for instance, be bipolar, so we're dealing with
Absolutely.
mental
Yeah.
illness
Someone
over
may
the
be gay,
next couple of
someone-
months.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I mean,
Yeah.
do you think that theory is valid? That the powers that be are doing that? you
I
know?
think that the soap operas themselves, the executive producers of soap operas,
They're
will
picking
argue
up
it's the
on
other way
issues.
around, that they're simply responding to what's happening out there in the community, in their storylines. I think they would argue it's not
imitating art or
imitating
art.
real life.
But they're
Imitating
often
life,
putting
yeah.
across moral messages, aren't they? So pick up
Yes.
the bipolar thing.
Yeah.
I think it was can't remember the character, but it was in EastEnders, who was the girl who
Right,
was
okay.
suffering with bipolar, and as was her mother.
I didn't see it, and I don't know how it was represented.
Now that was a very
but,
positive
was it?
message that came out of that, which was the message was people who live with bipolar condition are actually normal, great people, positive kind of people. They
I think
just
it's
struggle.
great that the TV shows that have a large viewer base actually use that power to disseminate really useful information, which is social information.
So that's not. So actually, they're putting across
I
truth,
think
aren't they?
it's putting
yes,
across
I
the
think
truth.
they are, yeah.
It's educating.
I suppose it
It's
depends
not
on the way it's
manipulating,
represented.
is it? It's using their power in a positive way.
It's educating to a certain
Educating
degree,
to a degree.
Yeah.
And I think we should do more of that. I think that's definitely not in my classification of manipulation or lies or deception. I think it's truth.
Unless there is a misrepresentation of
Yes.
that. So say in the bipolar situation, that it was somebody who was completely out of control, unmedicated, undiagnosed somehow, but still diagnosed, and was running riot with a big hatchet. That wouldn't have done the cause of people with bipolar much
And
good
there'll
at
be a lot
all,
of
would it?
people who would perhaps, even with a moderate story about bipolar, may phone in and say that doesn't represent me as a person.
Well, because
who...
they're never going to get the
No,
whole,
no, not
all
at
the
all.
facts,
No.
are they?
Of course.
It's almost like when they do shows like that, there should be a 2-minute briefing before or after the show by the channel that says, we were doing this in a general case because we think it's a good thing to do.
They do say
as a
something at
public
the end.
service.
If you've been affected by anything within this program,
here's your number.
Here's your
Yeah,
number,
yeah,
don't
yeah.
they? Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
do we think that the authorities actually manipulate us through the media? Do you think there's a concerted effort to do that? I mean,
it's
this is
conspiracy theory again
it's
now.
a kind of show in itself,
Question
isn't
for
it?
me about that. The only thing I don't know is whether it's the media controlling the government or the government controlling the media.
Right.
What I do know is it's one way or the other.
But
or both.
somebody's
Yeah.
manipulating us somewhere along
Yeah,
the line.
absolutely.
I think
Yeah.
I personally think it's
I
whoever's
have
got the
no
most
doubt
money.
about that. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing or a good thing. I just believe absolutely that there's something going on there between them.
Okay, I think we'll probably come back to that on another show, because I think it's a show in its own.
Yeah,
But,
definitely,
just to end now, how can we live more honest lives, more truthful lives? How can we be less what do we need to do as individuals and then as a society, Mark?
When you mentioned this in the break that we're going to be looking at this, the thing that came to my mind was something like mindfulness. We would have to be a lot more mindful. We talked about how we told lies, both of us, similar lies, in a shop just to get out of the shop.
Yeah.
And I wasn't at the time. I wasn't even conscious about lying. I just wanted to get out of the shop,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't have even thought I was telling a lie if you hadn't have actually had a similar story. So I think in order to to kind of be more honest, I think we have to be more aware of what we're doing in the present moment, really, which is mindfulness, isn't it?
Yeah.
You practice mindfulness, Mark?
Yeah, I do.
You guys practice?
Yeah.
I do,
Yeah.
actually.
My daughter bought me a mindfulness book as a gift, and it's full of great stuff. I would recommend it very much so.
So, but this honesty thing, this being true to ourselves, being true, being transparent actually as a society, and as it requires effort, doesn't it?
It does.
And
It
like
requires
mindfulness does,
integrity.
you have to practice it.
Yeah, you
Yes.
have to. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
courage as well, because we may be being told things that we don't like the sound of, because other people are being truthful and honest to us and about us. So it's the courage to be able to take
Yes.
that stuff
So
on board.
maybe it's not what we say, it's how we say it. So if we have a truth to deliver, I don't mean package it up in bows and things, but maybe be a little bit gentle about how we put it across rather than being brutal.
I find that interesting, because following this whole kind of Labour Party campaign for the leader, and I think that's what Jeremy Corbyn's got. Whether you like him or not, or agree with what he's saying or not, he's, as one commentator said, he's giving a straight answer to a straight question, which is
Yeah.
kind of rare in politics.
Yes,
and it's
and
actually
because
about
it's
how
rare, it's
it's about
refreshing,
it's about
isn't
how
it?
he delivers it.
Yeah.
Actually,
It's interesting because, you know, as a quick example, he was being asked a question about being friends with terrorists, and he got angry with that question. And I think he was right to do so. He could have given the political answer, which would have been pussyfooting between the lines, but he didn't. He chose to attack the presenter.
It upset
interviewer.
him.
And
Didn't
it
you just see that it was
showed
a
that
genuinely
honesty within him.
he was
But
being honest.
I think that's what people want in politics.
Yeah.
We're fed up of politicians
Yes.
evading giving
Yes.
an answer on something, and like you say, pussyfooting round and saying this and saying that, but never actually saying anything.
Okay, that's a great place to
It is.
end. I think we've ended on a hopeful note. We've maybe leading in perhaps to another show. Are we closing the gap between truth and falsehood, do you think, here?
I think we are. I believe that
Have we
with modern
achieved- have
technology,
we achieved that today?
yeah, we have, I think.
I'm not so optimistic. I think that there are reasons why I would talk for hours on why I think it's getting wider, but there's things we can do about it these days.
I think when we touched on mindfulness, and we all kind of agreed there. We need
Well,
to be more mindful.
thanks very much, guys, again for coming into the studio today.
you.
And we'll see you next time for Open Minds.